Welcome back to PSC Tech Byte. Today we proceed with our journey about provisioning Azure resources with Bicep template. And I want to show you how you can use a Bicep template in a GitHub Action workflow. In fact, you can use the ARM deploy Azure action to deploy either a JSON ARM template or a Bicep template. You can provide input parameters and you can get output values from the Bicep template or JSON ARM template. In order to do that, you will also need to log in to the target Azure environment using a service principal that you will have to create, for example, using the Azure CLI. So let me move to the demo environment and let me show you how to do that in practice. Here we have the Bicep template that we have been already using in one of the previous episodes. And specifically here, I'm simply provisioning a storage account using Bicep, then an application inside resource, a hosting plan for a function app that I will use. Here I have the provisioning of my function app with some settings, and I save in the output of the my Bicep template the URL and the app name of the function app. Then I create a service bus, and again I save in an output variable the name of the service bus namespace, and I also create a queue in the service bus. What I want to do through a YAML workflow for a GitHub action is to deploy this Bicep template and to configure and manage identity for the function app in order to access the target service bus with the proper permissions. So here we have the YAML template. It will be executed manually for the sake of simplicity, and I will simply use a set of environmental variables like the target subscription ID, the resource group name that I want to target in Azure, and the location of my resource group. Then, aside from the checkout of my code, I will log in to the target Azure environment, providing a secret that I have in my GitHub repository, and specifically here in the action secrets and variables, I have an Azure credential secret, which is the actual content of the output of the Azure CLI command that I executed to create a service principal for my account, for my application. Then I have the Azure CLI action that I use in order to create the target resource group if it does not exist already. And then I have finally the deployment of my Bicep template. Here I use the ARM-deploy version 1 action, GitHub action, and I need to specify that I will have a specific target subscription ID, a target resource group name. Then I provide the template of my Bicep file, and I will also provide an input parameter called resources prefix, which is defined at the top of my Bicep template right here, as you can see, as an input parameter, so that I can provide some input arguments to my Bicep template. I also defined an ID for my step because I want to rely on that ID in order to get back the output values from the template execution. In fact, the last step in my GitHub workflow action is the execution of yet another Azure CLI script in which, using bash, I will first of all define a variable called SB namespace ID, which is the output of the Azure CLI command to get the ID of the target service bus that got created. And in order to do that, I have to specify the resource group name, which is still an environmental variable, but I also have to specify the name of the service bus namespace that got created by the Bicep template. In order to do that, I need to access the collection of the steps in my workflow. I need to get the deploy one by ID. As you can see, this is exactly the ID that I defined right here in my step. Then I access the collection of outputs, and I can get by name the output variables of my Bicep template. So really easy syntax to get access to the output variables of my Bicep template. And then I say that I want to retrieve the ID of the service bus namespace that I'm retrieving with this command. Then I do the same in order to create a managed identity for my function app. So I specify one more time the resource group name using the environment variable, and then I specify the name of the function app as the value of the output variable of my Bicep template. Once I've done that, I have the principal ID of my function app, I have the ID of my service bus namespace. I can use Azure CLI to say that I want to add a new role assignment for my function app principal ID in order to be an Azure Service Bus data sender for my target service bus namespace ID. So I already published this code in my GitHub repository. So if we go here in GitHub, in this sample repository, I have my Bicep file deployed and merged into my main branch. And under the workflows, I have my YAML file with all of the steps that we just saw. So here I have the Bicep template, deploy Bicep template workflow action already executed in my target GitHub environment, just for the sake of saving some time. You can see it was successful. And if I go to my Azure subscription, we can see that I've got all of these resources deployed, and we can see that the function app does have a managed identity. In fact, if I click on identity, I can see that I have a managed identity for this function app. And if I go back to the service bus right here and I go to the access control settings, I can see under role assignments that my function app got assigned the Azure Service Bus data sender role for the target service bus. So it worked perfectly, and you can also see right here that right after the deploy Bicep step in my execution, when I did the actual Bicep template deployment, then in the configure manage identity step, we can see that we have in the Azure CLI the environment variable for the resource group name, but also the name of the target service bus namespace or the name of the function app retrieved from the output of the previous step. Like always, thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it interesting, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.